Hey, good afternoon, Dumelang, Molweni, Sanibonani. Greetings in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. It is such a great joy to be with you once more again in the space of the Lenten Insight as we go deeper into the reflections of the Lent time. I hope you are having a blessed time because I am certainly feeling blessed as I listen and continue to listen to God on God's revelation at this time in our lives. This afternoon or on this day, I just want to share with you on the subject of perspective and mindset. Perspective and mindset. Now, for reference, I just want to refer you to the book of Ephesians chapter 4, verses 22 to 24, and then Colossians chapter 3, verse 10. And it speaks there about the renewal of the mind and the thoughts and the attitude. Another one helpful scripture that I can just throw as I think is Romans chapter 12 verse 2, the renewal of your life, transformation of your life. Let's talk about perspective. What is a perspective? Perspective is a way or position of viewing things that essentially affect how you perceive and react to what you see or how you see other people. Perspective is an angle, it's a position or an angle through which you look at a situation. It is actually the position of your emotions, your feelings, your mind, what you believe in. On the other hand, there is what we call the mindset. The mindset are the convictions of your life, the things that you believe and the way you look at life, the way of thinking. So inevitably then, your way of thinking, which is your mindset, will impact how you are going to see things, which is your perspective, your worldview. Because the way we think and we see, and it's affected by the way we believe. What you believe and your way of thinking are the lenses through which you see reality. But the most important thing about this mindset thing, it is that mindset isn't the only thing really that impacts on our views on reality. One's perspective is also affected by one's identity. And when I talk about identity here, I talk about one's gender, sexual orientation, your economic class, your cultural background or basis, and the social status, and of course, the mindset, things, what you believe, your belief system. All of that includes it is included in your identity. As a result, no one's perspective or viewpoint comes from a neutral position. There is no such thing as a neutral perspective, because every perspective comes from a particular position, is influenced by the things I have just mentioned. You can either be conscious of your biases or you are ignorant of your biases, and therefore you believe that you are neutral. But objectively, there is nothing like a neutral perspective. Again, everything that we do or say, or our attitude on something or a situation or people or a person, all depends on our perspective on the situation. Therefore, the perspective can either make you or break you. Further, when a perspective it is narrow or too narrow and badly distorted, it has got a potential to hurt, harm, and destroy. A narrow and badly distorted perspective comes from what we call unconsciousness. Unconsciousness refers to your blindness or unawareness of your own thoughts, beliefs, and all the other things that are deeply embedded or imprinted in your subconscious mind. And therefore, because you are not consciously aware of the things that are influencing how you see reality, how you view people, how you view circumstances, then we call you to be an unconscious person. And when one is unconscious, they are not actively or intentionally processing their thoughts, their feelings, their emotions, and their embedded assumptions about life and about everything. They are ignorant of their stereotypes. They are not consciously aware of their stereotypes and biases. And they have what is conventionally known as unconscious bias. Now, the issue about unconscious bias, the fact that you are unaware, you are ignorant of what influences you and what prejudices you hold or in the biases you hold, does not justify for you to harm, hurt, or destroy. Unconsciousness is not a good excuse for you to go around putting people in boxes, discriminating against them, talking bad about them, and doing all other things that we normally see. It is our responsibility as individuals to be awake, active, and aware and present to ourselves and to our circumstances. We need to be awake, aware, and active in our interaction with the environment and people around us. That way, we will deal with unbiased. How do we ensure that we are conscious? We ensure that we are conscious and by using the best perspective to the view of life that we find ourselves in. Let me rephrase that for you. We hold the best perspective by broadening up our view of life and making sure that our perspective is as broad and as inclusive as possible. Since our worldview or perspective can never be neutral, the best we can do is to make sure that our perspective is as broad as possible. Broad perspectives means that we try to the best of our ability to consider all angles on the issue, and we look for all dimensions that we can find on the matter at hand. That way, when we consider all angles and dimensions of the issue, then our viewpoint is immediately opened up and we are able to see things from different perspective. When we talk about perspective, basically perspective, it talks about a three-dimensional view where you realize that in everything that you look at, there are three sides, if not more. It means we need to open ourselves up to the renewal of our minds and our hearts. How do we renew our minds and our hearts so that we can broaden our perspective? The Apostle Paul in Ephesians chapter 4 verse 23 talks about letting the Spirit renew your thoughts and attitude and putting on your new nature. Romans chapter 12 verse 2 advises, let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. From the two scriptures of Ephesians and the Romans, we realize and we recognize the fact that transformation and the renewal of one's life can only happen when our total self, the mind, the attitude, and the soul has been filled, touched, and moved by the Spirit of God. As human beings, we have our natural biases. We remain closed, biased, and narrow in our perspective and in our mindset until we are filled, touched, and moved and transformed by the Spirit of love and humility. Nobody is unable to be transformed or is unable to broaden their mind and perspective. In fact, anybody, whether you are a believer or you are an atheist, a man or a woman, a homosexual or a heterosexual, rich or poor, European or African, Asian or Australian, whatever you are, high or low in the social status, when you are filled and touched and moved by the Spirit of love and humility, you automatically become open-minded, you listen well, you do not rush to judge other people, and you reflect more and deeply. That way, you are able to have a broad perspective and you possess a clearer and graceful view of life, people, and circumstances. When you have a broad and graceful perspective, then you accept other people. Then when you have a broad and graceful perspective, you begin to understand that the truth you hold is just but one part of the truth and not the whole. So you accept other people, you don't discriminate other people, you don't try to change them, you don't try to manipulate them, you accept them, you don't even tolerate them, because we sometimes think that it is good to tolerate other people. Tolerance is an excuse for refusing to accept other people. You don't tolerate people, you simply accept them the way they are. Because when you try and control people, you manipulate people, it's nothing less than witchcraft. Broad-mindedness, open perspective. When you possess a broad and a graceful perspective, you work well with other people. You become a sought-after member of the team because you click well with people. You are good in the business of working with people. Diversity does not intimidate you. In fact, diversity excites you and enriches your mind and your perspective. when you've got a broad and graceful perspective or view of life, your intellectual and spiritual capital increases in value, and you become this deep, unfathomable well of wisdom and knowledge. Now, the big question then is, how do we practically broaden our perspective? There are 8 steps or just points that I want to share with you on broadening your perspective. How do you broaden your perspective practically? First, you believe deep in your heart and in your mind that you are biased. You have prejudices. And you believe deep in your mind and in your heart, and you know that the truth you hold is just but part of a bigger whole. It is not the whole truth. 2, you become humble and you listen more. People that have got a broad perspective, a broad view of life, a broad open worldview, they have an inexhaustible appetite and stamina for listening to other people. They listen to you. Thirdly, you are rooted in the truth that you hold without being arrogant or domineering against others about it. For you to have a broad perspective, for you to have a deep view, a clarity of mind and thought, you need firstly to be rooted in your own truth. You need to know what you believe. And even as you are rooted in your truth, you know that that is your truth. And like point number 1 was saying, it is just but part of the truth. It is not the whole truth. And even that belief or the stance you hold that you believe in, you don't become arrogant and try and be evangelistic about it and try to push it and shove it down people's throats. You become gentle and humble about it. Truth does not need you to be robust and fierce about it. You just state your truth, and your truth is gentle, assertive, and strong enough to hold its own ground. You don't need to be extraordinary in your performance or in your telling of truth. Number 4, you genuinely love other people. You genuinely love other people. If you are going to open your mind for other people, you need to love people. Fifthly, you have a deep respect for others and their views, especially where you disagree with them. Number 6, you develop an inquisitive attitude and mind. Meaning, for you to become broad in your perspective, you need to be like a child. You know, a child asks questions. A child does not take anything for granted or obvious. A child asks what you and I are taking as for granted or ignorant questions. The child asks questions. They ask everything. And therefore, you need to be a childlike in your attitude and in your mind. And then 7, inform yourself through all means that you can find, especially reading books or any media, and learning from other people. Inform yourself through books, through blogs on social media, through listening to speakers, through attending trainings, through going to workshops. Just inform. Have this appetite for knowledge. Just inform yourself. And then finally, think, meditate, reflect, and test all things intellectually and spiritually, or at conscience level. You think, meditate, reflect, and test all things intellectually and at a spiritual level, or the conscience level. Because then that way you include your gut level, your emotions, your feelings, and you put your mind over your emotions. Therefore, you reflect holistically, deeply, and broadly. That way, you will have an open, broad perspective on very important matters, and in fact, all matters of your life. And that way, you will attract other people. You will attract blessings. You will attract opportunities. You will attract help from others. You will be able to be successful in all that you do, because you are an informed, broad-minded person who is a deep well of wisdom. Perspective, it's where everything rises and falls. What is your perspective? What is your attitude? This Lenten period, the call and the challenge of our time, in this situation where we have got a multiplicity of views and beliefs and perspectives, we are called to be open-minded, open-spirited, open attitude. May God bless you. Amen.